And so, the state of Medicaid and home care is really pretty out of control. There's not enough aides to serve people, and there's so many programs available, so many seniors, especially who have worked in this country for so many years, and they're not taking advantage of some of the things that they might be able to get to help them to age in place. People are living so much longer. And so today we're going to cover a lot of different topics here. We have about 10 different topics, and it's all about Medicaid, estate planning, and making sure that folks, whether they're seniors or disabled folks, have the ability to be able to age in place and get the care that we need. And so today I have with me Lori Somick, and she is an attorney here in New York. Lori is the founder of New York Elder Law Group, a boutique elder law firm serving the boroughs, Long Island, and Westchester. They've been doing this for the last 2.5 decades and are heavily focused in Medicaid home care, nursing home Medicaid, and estate planning. Lori also recently wrote a book, A Guide to Medicaid Home Care in New York, and it should be published hopefully within the next month. She also writes for the New York Bar Association Elderly and Disabled Journal. She has an article in spring edition of Medicaid Appeals, and she loves educating seniors and their families on how to navigate the complex Medicaid bureaucracy so seniors and disabled people can get the care they deserve and protect their life savings. So thank you, Lori. And we have several questions. Thank you, that we want to ask you. And the first is, should I get long-term care insurance? And if so, when is the best time to get that?
She's teaching.
Lori?
I think you froze. I see you now.
Right. Okay, you can just go ahead. I'm going to remove myself when I'm not speaking from the screen so you don't hear any background noise.
Okay. So should I get long-term care insurance? And if so, when? It's a very interesting question. Long-term care insurance covers things that Medicare and regular health insurance doesn't cover. And what that would be primarily is home health aides, nursing home, assisted living. So statistically, for those of us who are 65 years old today, they say about 70% of us will need some kind of long-term care during our lifetimes. Is there a right age to get long-term care insurance? I feel there is. I mean, the rule of thumb has typically been the sweet spot is when you're in your 50s or early 60s. If you get it before that, you're probably going to be paying too much in premiums over the course of your lifetime. And if you get it too much after that, your premiums are going to be too high. So, whether you should get it or not, it's kind of a personal choice. It's good. The policies are kind of all over the place. They're not necessarily one size fits all, and they're not particularly consistent from one policy to the next and one person to the next. So, but if you are interested in pursuing that inquiry, I would do it during that age bracket. I think after that, you're probably not going to want to.
Becomes cost prohibitive, I guess, as a person gets too old, or maybe they have certain things that have already come up, disabilities, etc., right, which also probably raise the premiums. So just so everyone knows, we are not giving legal advice or insurance advice here. We are enlightening you on some of the things that Lori knows as an attorney, or I might know from dealing with all of the different people that I meet in the different geriatric networking groups that I belong to. We're just trying to make you aware of different things that you need to be thinking about, and each person should get their own attorney or their own insurance agent and have a conversation with them about their particular situation. So, Lori, I'm wondering, can long-term care insurance be used for an assisted living?
Yeah, actually it can. And that's kind of the one area where I feel like it's kind of pretty good to have long-term care insurance because, for instance, when you're in an assisted living facility, you are not in a skilled nursing facility. This is actually your new home. So so you can actually get Medicaid to pay for your care. Like you can get aids in the assisted living facility and have Medicaid pay for those under the home care program. And you can also have the long-term care insurance pay your room and board. So let's say I have someone right now who's in the Brandywine, and the room and board or the rent, as we might call it, is about $6,000 a month. So the long-term care insurance company pays that $6,000 a month, and then Medicaid pays for round-the-clock aides for that person. So that, because with an assisted living, it doesn't come with full care. I mean, you can purchase certain care packages with assisted living, but you're not getting care like you would be getting in a skilled nursing facility. So not everybody can live independently. So if they didn't have a caregiver with them, they wouldn't be able to be in the assisted living facility possibly. So that's the one place where you're kind of able to double dip. You can have the long-term care paying for your rent, and you can have Medicaid paying for your care. So that actually, I mean, I would say most assisted livings that I've seen are able to get paid by the long-term care policy. So that's actually a pretty good thing.
Mm-hmm. And so they're actually paying the rent, or they're paying usually a difference above the rent?
They're pretty much paying the rent. You know what? It depends on the daily cap. Most of these policies, although they're not consistent, many of the policies I've seen have a daily cap. They'll pay, let's say, $150 a day, and they have a lifetime cap, let's say $200,000 over the course of your lifetime. Whatever their cap is, assuming that it's enough to cover the rent, it will pay the rent. If it's enough to cover more than the rent, they would pay toward the care also. So what we have happening a lot of times is we have both things at play. We have the long-term care policy paying up to its maximum, call it $150 a day, just, as an example. And then Medicaid will come in and pay the difference of what the care costs. So often we have an interplay between the two things. We're dealing with long-term care insurance and Medicaid. Medicaid is always the payer of last resort. So if there's any other insurance available, it has to be exhausted before Medicaid steps in. So often what we're doing is we're exhausting the daily rate under the long-term care policy and having Medicaid come in and pay the difference. And that's probably a little more confusing than I make it sound, because when we're applying for home care and we have a long-term care policy in place, it's kind of tricky to figure out how to handle that. The Departments of Social Services don't all handle it the same way. For instance, New York City Medicaid, they will typically make you pay for whatever you're paying for, get reimbursed by the long-term care policy. Then they will, incorrectly, but it doesn't matter, they will consider that reimbursement from the policy to be income. They will have you put it into your pooled income trust. Then they will have you take it out of the pooled income trust and pay the aides for the next month. Then you get reimbursement from the long-term care policy for the next month, and you do the same thing month in and month out. And then Medicaid will pay for whatever the policy is not paying for. If we're in Nassau, on the other hand, I haven't had a lot of long-term care policy cases in Nassau, but the ones I have, they have actually had the client keep paying the premiums on the long-term care policy, not collect it, and they would provide the whole care. And then I'm assuming that what they do is they subrogate and they collect the policy either now or when the person dies. So it's a little bit confusing how it works. And
It's
there are
very
certain,
confusing.
very confusing. Yeah, there are certain regulations, but as a practical matter, whatever the DSS says to do, I just say yes.
Right. So let me ask you this. If a person has long-term care insurance and they want to go to a private pay type of assisted living, because some of them will say, well, we're only private pay. However, the person could probably private pay for their room. And then would they automatically, if they were eligible for Medicaid for the long-term care portion of it, would they automatically then be able to use it? Because some places tell me, well, we just don't take Medicaid at all.
They don't take Medicaid. They'll take the long-term care. If the person has long-term care insurance, most assisted livings are private pay, other than the ones that are under the assisted living program with Medicaid beds.
So
But
people,
they will,
if they want to use Medicaid, have to specifically look for an assisted living that says, yes, we can take Medicaid?
no, they're not taking Medicaid. They are not going to take the Medicaid. The care can be paid for by Medicaid. So what we would be doing is think of the assisted living as their apartment. That's our client's apartment. They're paying rent. Let's say they're paying it privately, or let's say the long-term care policy is paying it. Either way, we're applying for home care when we're in the assisted living. We're applying for home care just as if the person were in her own home, getting home health aides coming in. So in other words, the place isn't supplying the home health aides. We are actually bringing them in, and Medicaid is paying for them.
Okay.
So it's a little
And so
quirky.
assisted living can make a decision, though, that they don't want to be involved with the Medicaid portion. Like some of them have different levels of care in their communities. So they might have, let's say, a dementia floor, but that's staffed with their personnel to take care of the people in general. So that's where it, I guess, becomes a situation of, then they're like, well, we're private pay, and so we don't take Medicaid. And so then the person would have to find a facility that would, or community that would allow it, even though they don't take it, but that they would allow that type of arrangement.
Right. So it's not that they don't take Medicaid. They don't take Medicaid. They may say, no, we won't allow you to bring your own aid in. Now,
Right.
they don't know or care if the aid is getting paid for privately by the family or by Medicaid. So their concern might just be, we're not going to let you have your own aid. You have to avail yourself of our package of services. There is such thing as that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go on a case-by-case basis. But yeah,
Okay.
that's
so there are places that do take Medicaid for an actual assisted living community above the cost of just care, where maybe the person, how does that work? Does the person usually have to turn over their Social Security, or can they just, if they're getting it for an assisted living, as opposed to being able to use a pooled trust and stuff like that?
So there are some buildings that are actually assisted living program buildings, like Boulevard ALP in Queens. Then there's like Elm York and I think Madison York, where the whole building is a Medicaid building. They have all Medicaid beds. So then what we're doing is they are taking the person's Social Security as the room and board, and the person gets to keep a certain allowance out of their Social Security. And then Medicaid is paying for the care. So it's still applied for under the home care program, but in those settings, we are using their aides in their facility, and the Medicaid is paying for that portion of the thing, and their income is paying for the room and board. And if their income is higher than the allowance and the room and board, they can still use a pooled income trust, and they kind of have to in order not to give up some of their income.
Okay. So what if a person already has long-term care? Is there any kind of planning that they need to still do in order to either, I guess, get Medicaid in addition? Should they be thinking about that? Do they need to worry about assets that are in their name? How does that work?
Good question. So back in the day, when we first started seeing these policies, I'm thinking, I don't know, a dozen years ago or so, the thought was, and back in, way back in the day, the look back period for nursing home Medicaid was 3 years. So the thought was, I'll buy long-term care insurance. It will cover my expenses for 3 years, so I won't transfer any of my assets until I get sick. Because once I get sick, I can transfer the assets. The long-term care insurance will pay for the 3-year look-back period, which it was at the time, and then I'm good to go. It didn't exactly work out that way. As it turned out, people didn't exactly understand the extent of their coverage. Then the look-back period changed to 5 years, and a lot of people had the 3-year policies or the policies with the lifetime cap or the daily cap. So it didn't exactly work out that they were covered and didn't have to do any planning. So what I recommend to clients is that you go ahead and do your Medicaid planning, your estate planning. Let's try to get your assets into certain types of trusts or over to your kids or whatever planning preferences you have. Let's try to do that while you're healthy. Don't wait until you get sick, because like I say, we could have a situation where we use both things, Medicaid and long-term care policy. Or worst case scenario, we'll use the long-term care policy and we won't need the Medicaid. But I don't like for clients to be in a position of guesstimating wrong and getting stuck.
Right. Does Medicaid insist that a person use their long-term care insurance first?
Yes.
Okay. So
Any insurance.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So what if they need somebody for 24-hour coverage? And, some people have already gone out. They've tried to go through some of these different home care companies that say, we can get you, an aide and it'll be free. And, or you could hire your family member through one of the CDPAP type programs. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a huge problem in New York right now. That's why I wrote this book that's coming out. People get into the long-term care program through many different doors. Like you said, they may go right to a care agency who contracts with an MLTC, and they say, okay, come on, we'll have your daughter be your aide, blah, blah, blah. We can do that anyway, with or without a particular agency. But a lot of them end up either let's say the nursing home discharge planner might hook them up with an MLTC. Somehow they get hooked up with a managed long-term care plan. And once they do that, it takes several months, but the managed long-term care is going to give them as few hours as absolutely possible, because they have a profit motive. They are privatized, they are for profit, and they are unapologetically looking to give as little as possible. Because they're on a capitation of benefit paradigm, meaning they're managed care, they get paid the same number of dollars a month for each person on their rolls, whether they're giving 2 hours or they're giving 24 hours. So they like the 2 hours, and if they have somebody who's clearly in need of round the clock care, you're still going to see them giving 6 hours to that person. Then what often happens is that person will ask the plan, going down the road, mom declines or she's not getting any better. They'll ask the plan, can I have more hours? And the plan will come out and assess, and they'll say no, either no or, okay, we'll give you 1 more hour a day. And then, you have a right to do a plan appeal. So, okay, I want to do a plan appeal. So the plan will take your appeal right over the phone, and then they'll call you back, let's say the next day, and say, no, I'm sorry, we've denied your appeal. You're staying at 6 hours or 7 hours or whatever the number is. And then the person hangs up, is dejected, may or may not even read the letter that comes in the mail in the next couple of weeks, which says the same thing that the person said, only it also says you have a right to an external appeal, you have a right to a fair hearing, you have all these rights, but the person may not even be reading that 9-page letter that they get in the mail. So this, for many, many people, is the end of the road. As far as they're concerned, they can't get more care. And the truth of the matter is, yes, they can. I mean, we have, not just in New York, but back in 1999, there was a U.S. Supreme Court case called Olmstead. And that case held that people with disabilities are entitled to receive their care in the home. And even if it's the same level of care that they would get in a nursing home, they don't have to receive it in a nursing home. They can receive it in their home. Unfortunately, we have this managed care paradigm in New York. We've had it since like 2014, and they've really run amok. But when we appeal these plans, we typically win. I mean, I don't want to say we win 100% of the time, but we usually win because people who need 24 hours care are entitled to get 24 hours care. And when clients do the home care through my office, for instance, I will do the application strategically. We're not going to go straight to the MLTC. If they're eligible, we're going to put them through the immediate needs program. And that's where we get an expedited application through. It gets approved really quickly. And when they get assessed for how many hours, they're going to give them the number of hours that they need. And to help ensure that, we have a care manager participate in the assessments so that we can get, because the nurse assessor could ask the client a question like, can you go to the bathroom by yourself? Every client says yes to that question. But when you dig a little bit, maybe they need help getting down on the toilet, need help getting up, need help cleaning up. They're not going to accurately report what they need, and it's embarrassing too.
Embarrassing, that's it.
So we will typically get, if we need 24 hours of care, we will typically get that through immediate needs. Then once they've been receiving services for 4 months or so, and it's time for everyone to transition into managed care, if we do the transition properly, we get transition rights. And what that means is the managed care cannot cut their hours for the next 90 days. Once they enroll the person, they've got to keep everything the same for 90 days. And then if they come in and try to reduce the hours, well, then we can appeal them. And these are very winnable appeals. And they don't even, honestly, they don't even try to justify their actions for most of the appeals. They don't even participate in some of the appeals. And I think it's because they figure 95% of these people don't have attorneys, and they're taking the 6 hours we give them. The 5% that fight it all the way, we're going to lose, but we still prevented the money from going out for this whole period of time while they were appealing. And okay, you win a few, you lose very few if you're them. So.
Right. So it seems like a bit of a crisis to me, because there are so many people in this country that are living longer. I think I read a statistic recently that people in their mid 80s and beyond, 50% of them end up with some form of dementia. And to me, if you have dementia, it's kind of like not an on again, off again kind of thing. So it's not like you're demented for 6 hours a day that they're going to give you. Now you have these other 18 hours a day that you have to survive. And if you have dementia, it's craziness. So I don't even understand how they could think that a person with dementia could live with only 6 hours unless they're living in a home with other people. They would have to leave their home, etc. So my question to you, Lori, is that what is a person to do who does not have the funds to pay an attorney and they need this kind of appeal? Are there any grants or anything out there that would help them? Do they get reimbursed for having to have had to hire an attorney to get what was something that they should have gotten in the first place?
That's what disturbs me is, okay, there are a couple of places to turn. They could go to NILAG, the New York Legal Assistance Group. And, I don't know what their caseload is, but they assist people who don't have funds. There's also a place called, their acronym is LOL. Oh, geez, I can't think of the name.
We'll post it in the show notes later. Lori will get that to me and we'll put it in the show notes for you.
They also give, they also represent seniors at no cost or on a sliding scale. But what disturbs me the most is that other than, and there may be a couple of more places, those are the two that I have referred people out to over the years. There may be other places that assist, maybe the elder law clinic at CUNY Law School, Queens College Law School. There may be places like that that will assist people, but I don't think it's anywhere near the amount of assistance that would be necessary for all the people who are getting insufficient benefits to avail themselves of. That's what really bugs me, is that for the whatever the number is, the 5% of people who can afford to hire an attorney or whose family can afford to do it for them, there's that too. They will get justice. They will get what they deserve more often than not. And for the other people, New York is just getting away with it right now. And that's what really, really bothers me.
Okay, so good answers here, Lori. A lot of good information. And so now we're wondering, what is the difference in the look back period for what some people refer to as community Medicaid or home care Medicaid? They're both the same thing. Or long-term care, which is usually meant for a nursing home.
Okay, so we have nursing home Medicaid or institutional Medicaid, and the look back period for that is 5 years. It's been 5 years since 2006. So that is what it is. In New York, we've never had a look back period for home care or community Medicaid, same thing, like you said. We've never had a look back period. At the very, very beginning of COVID, Governor Cuomo pushed for, and the legislature passed, a big, huge $2 billion worth of Medicaid cuts. And look back period.
screen was freezing up for a minute there, Lori. Can you just repeat like the last 60 seconds?
Part of that was that they put a look back period. I know we both just got circles. Can you hear me?
I could hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
It's freezing a little, but I hear you.
Okay, so they passed a $2 billion Medicaid cut package, and part of the cuts was that they put a 2.5 year, 30-month look back period on home care. Now, because it was the beginning of COVID and the federal government passed an emergency law that required states not to cut benefits if they wanted to receive these extra funds, New York was not able to implement that law, that look back period. Now, as of this day, they still have not. It's our expectation that the earliest that they can implement it is March of 24. It could be as late as March of 25. I'd love to see it get repealed between now and then. I don't know. I just don't know what's in store after March of 24. But right now, we are still operating under the old rules, and the old rule is there's no look back period. So if mom needs home care and she still has her assets in her name, we can transfer her assets. We could put them into let's say a Medicaid trust, or transfer them to her kids, or, whatever. And we could right away apply for home care and get a home health aide in place. And until they implement the new look back period, that's what we are doing and able to do. So there's a little bit of
right.
mystery in what the future holds.
Right. Folks that are on the fence, though, should not be waiting at this particular juncture, because once they make it official, then if they do have assets and they haven't done the planning and don't call an attorney first to figure out what they might be able to do even at the last minute, then they could be giving away a lot. Right.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you totally got that exactly right. Yeah. So when I'm talking to people who are telling me, I have a feeling mom's going to need care. She's not quite there yet. In the next couple of years, what do you think we should do? I think we should do her transfers now and get that clock ticking on the 2.5 years, because by the time she needs it, we very well may have the look back period in place. So that's the way I would slice it.
When it comes to Medicaid estate planning, a lot of people might think that a will is going to really help them. And it's just not enough. It's been said in many of the events that I've gone to with attorneys, the will is the catch-all. It's for what's left afterwards that didn't get included into that trust. But the main things, perhaps people want to have a trust for them. So could you explain to us what might be the difference between a revocable or an irrevocable trust? And are they ever referred to by other names as well?
Okay. So starting with a will, all that means is that you get to say who gets what. But before anyone gets anything, your nominated executor has to go into court and do a probate proceeding. In Queens, I probably don't need to tell you that could be a year. Depending on the situation, it could be longer. Not the best plan. A revocable trust, an RLT, revocable living trust, that will, any assets that are in that trust will not pass through your estate. So in other words, you're avoiding probate when you use a revocable living trust. So anything you title into that trust, when you pass away, your family is not going to have to go into court and probate anything. They're gonna go into the attorney's office. We're gonna read the trust. we're going to say, okay, this piece of property goes to John, and we're going to prepare a deed and title it to John. It's a private document. It's out of court. It's, especially if you have properties in different states, it's really good to put them in a trust, because you have to do a probate in each state where you have property. So it makes life a lot cleaner in the end if you've done a trust. And that's a revocable or an irrevocable. The kind of irrevocable trust that we do a lot in the Medicaid planning realm is a Medicaid asset protection trust. Now, that trust, when you title assets into that trust, that also they will also not pass under your estate. You will avoid probate with respect to those assets. The thing that it does that a revocable trust doesn't do is it has Medicaid consider those assets to be out of your name. With a revocable trust, Medicaid considers those to be your assets. And the reason is you can do anything you want with them. So if they are available to you, they are available for Medicaid purposes. With a Medicaid asset protection trust, they are not available for Medicaid purposes. There are also some formalities that come with the extra protection. And one of those formalities is that you're not going to be your own trustee. You're going to appoint, your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, someone who's not you. And you don't have access to the principal balance, the principal of that trust. You do have access to the interest or the income that trust throws, but the principal cannot be paid out to you directly. So when we're planning ahead, I kind of like to go over with the person, like, what do you need to have at your disposal? Liquid that you could touch, go into any time that you want. And that money, whatever that number is for a given individual, that money I would either put in a revocable trust or leave it in the client's personal name, and then take the bulk of their assets that they don't think they're going to need to touch and put that into the irrevocable or the Medicaid asset protection trust. So, you don't want the person who does not need care yet to be choked financially and not be able to get at any of their money. People don't like that.
Right.
But the bulk of your assets, a lot of people aren't going to touch their life savings. That's sitting there until they die, and it's going to their kids. That money you put in that trust.
So if they put that money in that trust and they ran out of the money in their little other account and they needed some different things, could someone take money from that trust, not issue it to that person, but purchase the benefit or need that the person might be in need of?
Yeah. So for instance, the trustee could make a distribution, a principal distribution to, typically how we put it is to one of the ultimate beneficiaries. So let's say that's the kids, right? They could make a distribution to one of the kids, one or more of the kids, and the kid could go out and buy the Bentley that mom wants for her. I don't recommend doing that within the first 5 years, because if mom needs nursing home in that period of time, we're going to have to give back everything that she put into that trust. We're going to have to do what Medicaid calls a complete return of gift. It's going to have to go back to mom, and then we're going to end up flipping over to what I call a plan B, where we can still make a gift to the trust or to the kids, but we can't give the whole thing. We're going to have to keep some back so that private pay can be done. The gift that we give is going to create a penalty period. And what we're typically going to do is make a loan to one of the kids and use that money to private pay the nursing home during the penalty period created by the gift.
Very good. So now we're going to have a moment from our sponsor. Our sponsor is Bresry Realty Incorporated, and Bresry is a company that I do own. I am the corporate real estate broker there, and I felt that it was very important to get this kind of information out to seniors through another company I own. I did develop PESID back in 2010. We're also a networking group, and we do have meetings here in the New York area currently, and hoping to expand it nationally as we go. So back to you, Lori, and our next question. Hang on one second. So what would be some basic estate planning that people definitely should do and should have in place?
So if someone wants to just do the basics, they would want to do a power of attorney. That's where you're appointing somebody to handle your financial matters for you. If let's say you got hit by a car and you're unconscious, somebody has to be able to access your accounts. Someone has to be able to maybe transfer money out of your name, do whatever has to be done to get you the care and to protect your assets. So no matter how old a person is, and I'm talking from 18 on, they should have a durable power of attorney, because any of us could have an accident. It's more prevalent with the older folks, but anybody can be put out of commission for some reason. So every adult should have a power of attorney, and that's more important to me than any other document. If you don't want to have a will, don't have a will, but you do want a power of attorney. You also should do a healthcare proxy, so that, again, in the same situation, you're unconscious, maybe a procedure has to be done for you. Who do you want to give the consent for that procedure? Do you want it to be your daughter who's a nurse, or do you want it to be your son who is a cocaine addict? You want to say who's the one who's going to make the decision. You don't want it to be, left open and end up having to have a judge make the decision. So that's an important document. And, you should have a will if you want to have some say in where your assets go. I mean, again, I think you should have a trust, but if you're not ready for that, if you haven't accumulated assets yet, whatever, for whatever reason, you still want to have a will. Whatever things you have, you want to say where they go when you die. So I consider that the very basic set of planning documents. And with planning, it's not something that you do once and forget about it. As your situation changes, A, as you get older, B, as you get richer, hopefully, acquire more assets, you want to revisit your plan and see, is the plan that I made when I was 30 still a good plan when I'm 60? Chances are the answer is no. You kind of want to anticipate what your needs are going to be in the next, decade.
So is there anything that's going on in New York right now with the Medicaid rules, or just any kind of bottlenecks, anything like that that you want to let us know about?
So I missed the first half of your question because it froze.
I said, are there any bottlenecks in New York now causing troubles with people being able to get on Medicaid? Is all of the new people we have coming in, whether they're, people seeking asylum or what have you, is that affecting any of the people that are already here trying to apply for Medicaid? Is there anything extenuating circumstances that you think we should be enlightened about?
I don't happen to have personal knowledge about that particular issue, about people who are newly coming into this country. What I'm seeing that's problematic is the bad behavior on the part of the managed long-term care companies, that transparent profit motive. They're making it harder. They're trying to make it harder. We've had, since COVID, a shortage of aides. That's a little bit less of a problem now than it was a year ago. The agencies were having trouble staffing the cases a year ago. We've kind of gotten past that. We've had a lot of changes, well, downstate anyway. Some of the Medicaid field offices have combined, like the Queens and Brooklyn CASA, which is I call them field offices. They've combined, and they've moved over to Brooklyn, and a lot of the staff kind of quit when that happened. So in my opinion, they've had a little bit of trouble
Right. So
handling
CASA
this.
is like a network of social workers that help people to be able to apply for these different programs. Is that what CASA does?
Yeah, well, that they are I call them the field offices. They are the ones who do the assessments for the home care when we go through immediate needs. So instead of going to an MLTC, they are these field offices are a part of Medicaid, and they are actually sending their nurse out to do the assessment, and they are determining what the hours are, and they're sending it out to a vendor agency to put the care in place. So they, they are basically really smoothly over the years. They've had some troubles lately. I kind of blame it on what's been going on with the state and all the cuts and all the changes. I mean, the humans who work there are doing what they can, but sometimes their hands are getting tied. So that's been a bit of a problem lately. The unwinding of the COVID easements has been happening. So whereas during COVID, when people came up for recertification, Medicaid would look at their information for this new year and decide, are they still eligible? And if the answer is no, they would cut them. But under the federal rule pertaining to COVID, they weren't allowed to cut them. So now that the COVID easements are ending, now they are. So they've been sending out recertifications to every single person on the rolls. I mean, not all in 1 month, but on a rolling basis. So now they've got to have people reviewing all these recertifications, sending out notices, doing this, doing that. So, if people's energies are devoted to that, what are they not able to get to? What they're not able to get to, for one thing, is rebudgeting cases. Like if somebody on home care is budgeted wrong and we're asking for a new budget, those requests are piling up somewhere. A lot of administrative and bureaucratic, I guess, like you said, bottlenecks. So, I mean, we're still getting it done, and we're fighting the good fight, and people are getting the care, but it hasn't gotten any easier.
Taking a while to accomplish it all. Thank you so much for being here, Lori. Lori is an excellent estate planning attorney. Where can people reach you, Lori? Can you give them a phone number?
Sure. I'm at 718-740-3300, or you can go to my website, which is www.nyelderlawgroup.com. And
okay, perfect.
There's also a little webinar on my website talking about all of this home care stuff, if you want to take a look at it.
Excellent. So we'll try to have Lori come back to our show again, hopefully maybe in November or December, and get some more insights. But I think this was so valuable to those listening. And we'll have a couple of extra videos at the end of this that you will be able to click on and choose to see some other information that we got out there to empower seniors, because that's what we're about at PESID. We're about empowering seniors. Let's go.
Woo!
Woo! All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.